They're organisms that have flat teeth and long digestive tracts that allow them to handle plant matter. So to pick an herbivore, I've picked an aphid. Now, an aphid, if you've never heard of an aphid is also referred to as an ant cow. And the reason why they're called ant cows is because ants are usually around them, so it looks as if the ant is herding them, kind of keeping them in line. And they're kind of sort of the aphid's security detail. And in return, the aphids produce a substance that the ants like to consume called honeydew. So this is another example of a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. So here we have our herbivore that's eating the plants. Next level is our secondary consumer. So it's the second to eat. The secondary consumer consumes the primary consumer. Now this can be a carnivore, this can be an omnivore, but it cannot be an herbivore. So something that could eat our aphids are ladybugs. And whoever thought that a ladybug could be a predator like this? So that ladybug is definitely enjoying a little afternoon lunch there, a little snack with a little aphid. Now, from our secondary consumer, we'll move on to our tertiary consumer. So this is our third level consumer, the third to eat. The tertiary eats the secondary. Now, this could be a carnivore, it could be an omnivore like our ladybug, or it could be a decomposer. So something that could eat our ladybug here could be a frog. And I chose a picture of a leopard frog. This is typically the type of frog that would be used for dissection. And frogs are considered carnivores, so they're meat eaters. They don't really have big teeth. They do have teeth, but they're more for holding prey in place instead of for tearing or chewing. So this is a really simple food chain. So we got our producer, our first consumer, our second, and our third. So we'll move on up to a food web. Now, a food web is basically showing multiple food chains. And you can see here in this wetland, so it looks like we've got a marsh here. Um, Marshes are different from swamps because marshes, there's an absence of trees. Swamps have trees, marshes don't have trees. And when we look at this, I can see several different food webs. So there's one, and there's one, and there's one, and there's one. Now, if we went through each of these, which I'm not going to torture you with that, but if we went through each of these, we would see that compared to the food chain, we're going to get a whole lot more information. So in the food chain, we saw a single feeding relationship, a single role that that organism played in the ecosystem at that time. So the role that an organism plays in an ecosystem is called niche. It's niche. So we would have seen that the frog in that ecosystem was a tertiary consumer. Um, if you make a bigger picture of what's going on in your ecosystem in terms of the flow of energy using a food web, then you're going to see other possible roles that organisms play. So let's make a food web. Now, with my food web here, I'm going to start out with our food chain. So we have those green plants there, eaten by the aphids, eaten by the ladybugs, and then the frog. So I'm going to go with the plants are eaten by the aphids, the ladybugs, and then I'm going to have something to eat our ladybugs. So a nice little dragonfly like this beast right there can eat the ladybug. And then I could have something eat the dragonfly. So I'm going to pull in a big wide mouth bass here that's going to gobble up that beast of a dragonfly there. So there is a second pathway of the flow of energy. And we're going to chalk in the third one here. So I'm going to start with these plants, same plants. And those plants are going to be gobbled up by butterflies. Now this particular butterfly that you see here, This is Miss Jessie's butterfly that we had first semester, and we just let it hang out back there in our room, and it came out of its cocoon, and this is what we got, this little monarch butterfly. But sorry, monarch butterfly is a part of our food web, and it's going to be gobbled up. What's going to eat it? Well, mice will eat it. So I'm going to see this little mouse here is gobbling up some monarch butterflies. So it looks like it's going to have a big dinner. And then this mouse is going to be eaten by this fox. Don't ask me what's going on here, but it looks quite interesting. I wish I did know what was going on there. Now, I mentioned that when you have a food web instead of a food chain, you can see a broader picture of what organisms are doing in the ecosystem, multiple roles that they might play. So let's see how this could look. So I'm going to go through and put in the level of consumers. So the aphids are primary consumers, ladybugs secondary, and then frogs third. Now I'm going to go this way with this food chain. So the aphids are still primary, ladybugs are still secondary, and now we have the dragonfly being the tertiary consumer. And the bass is what's called a quaternary consumer. It's the fourth level consumer. Now we're going to take our plants and we're going to go this way. So the butterfly is now our primary consumer. The mouse is our secondary, and the fox is our tertiary. So you could see already how I could probably put in some more lines here to expand this. I could say, that fox might eat that frog. So I could draw a line there. And the fox would be a tertiary and a quaternary consumer. So this is the kind of information that you get when you construct a food web compared to a food chain. So a food chain does have some limitations. And then last are the ecological pyramids, and there's three different types. The first is called an energy pyramid, and an energy pyramid just shows you the amount of energy that's available to move from one level to the next. So if we look at this particular, well, it's kind of like a food chain, except for it's stuck in the form of a pyramid, but it's still producer at the trophic levels, and then primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary consumers. But if you see, only 10% of the energy moves on at each level. So if you go much past this point, you're going to have to break out the calculator. But there's not a lot of energy that's passed from one organism to the next. A lot of energy is lost as heat. But we do consume a lot of different things, so we're going to get plenty of glucose for our ATP energy needs. Next is the biomass pyramid. Now, a biomass pyramid shows you the amount of organism that is available for consumption at each level. So with this one, we're saying that the producers this level about 1,000 kilograms, and then our herbivores about 100 kilograms. Our carnivore here, which is our secondary consumer, about 10 grams, and then our top carnivore here, our tertiary consumer, is about 1 kilogram. And then last is the numbers pyramid. So the numbers pyramid is exactly what it says that it is. It shows you the number of organisms at each level. So the process of getting to these numbers, there's a lot of different ways that you could do it, but requires creating what are called quadrants, not quadrants, but quadrants. And these are little tiny areas that you can count the organisms that are in them, plug that information into a formula, and then get the number of organisms in that area. So this will require a little bit of extra work to get to this point. So looking at all of these together, we've got our energy pyramid showing the amount of energy that's passed at each level. The biomass pyramid, how much of the biomass, how much living tissue is available for consumption at each level. Thank goodness the humans on the top. And then the numbers pyramid. So the one that we saw earlier were literally numbers. This one is showing you pictures of the relative numbers. So we're kind of looking that there's more plants compared to small herbivores and omnivores compared to carnivores compared to the top carnivore. So these are the three basic ways to show the movement of energy through your ecosystem.